The presidential candidate of Nigeria's opposition, People's Democratic Party, has accused the nation's judiciary of being hand in glove with the nation's ruling class. Atiku Abubakar, in a World press conference, says, despite overwhelming evidence presented by his team of counsels, the justices of the nation's apex court allegedly subverted the will of the people.
Now, his press conference is coming after the Supreme Court ruling, which threw out his appeal affirming the victory of President Bola Tinubu at the presidential elections, which held in February this year. Marvelous Ogbonmwan has more in this report.
The court and electoral commission are two critical institutions that safeguards the democracy of any nation. However, in cases where they become corrupt and subvert the will of the people for gain, they can best be described as anti-democracy and working against the development of their host nation.
When two critical institutions like the court and the electoral commission are trapped in an even web of political marginalization, it becomes next to impossible for democracy to thrive.
Recently, the two institutions in Nigeria have received the short end of the stick from supporters of political candidates who believe they have not acted above board. Nigeria's Chief Justice had earlier warned judicial officers whilst administering oath of office to Federal High Court judges to be wary of their conduct and avoid gifts from members of the political class, which can put the image of the judiciary into disrepute.
Your lordships must sever ties with anything that will smear your hands and bring you into disrepute in the course of your new assignment. The bench is neither for the indolent, the greedy, nor those with dubious character, who can easily fall for a plate of porridge offered by desperate litigants. You must at all times rise above temptations and trials.
However, the recent judgment by the nation's apex court has once again raised questions on the integrity of the judiciary. While supporters of President Bola Tinubu believe the judiciary performed its duties creditably well, the opposition People's Democratic Party presidential candidate thinks the judiciary left many unanswered questions and compromised the appeal process.
If the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, implies by its judgment that crime is good and should be rewarded, then Nigeria has lost. And the country is doomed irrespective of who occupies the presidential seat. If the Supreme Court decides that the electoral umpire, INEC, can tell the public one thing and then do something else in order to reach a corruptly predetermined outcome, then there is really no hope for the country's democracy and electoral process.
We may be disappointed, but one thing I want to reiterate here is that we are not deterred.
For many, the recent Supreme Court judgment brings closure to grievances relating to Nigeria's presidential election. However, for some, the judgment remains a bitter pill to swallow. Marvelous Ogbonmwan reporting for News Central.
And of course, from what it seems, the developments and the reactions to not just Nigeria's elections, but also the Supreme Court rulings, may just never end. You might see also world press conferences from other political parties in the coming days, weeks, months, maybe. But we're joined this morning by Jide Ojo, his development consultant and public affairs analyst. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, sir. It's one more press conference by alleging Atiku Abubakar, and of course, once again reacting to the Supreme Court's ruling, declaring, of course, that Bola Tinubu won the elections. Let me just quickly share some of the things that he mentioned, which I think were pretty telling. He declared, outrightly that Bola Tinubu, the president, forged his certificate. He said it outright, that he wasn't qualified to contest. Mostly also, one of the reasons rather is because he had a forged certificate. Mr. Ojo, do you think that, we would ever let this go? Do you think that, Atiku Abubakar and, of course, other members of the PDP, maybe other politicians, Nigerians generally, would be able to let go of the allegations of forgery against the president?
Well, I'm not Nostradamus, so I may not be able to precisely predict how people will react or what will happen in the nearest future. But what I need our watchers, viewers to understand is that Abubakar Atiku is just playing politics. And I need to put this in context. I'm by no means saying maybe the president did not or have issues with perjury and forgery or whatever. But at what point did Atiku Abubakar realize that he needs to mount a legal challenge against Bola Tinubu? Bola Tinubu had been his political friends from the days they were in, under the tutelage of the late Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, the elder brother of Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. They were there. And this issue of perjury and forgery was tabled by the no less than legal luminary, Gani Fayemi, way back in 1999, fought all through to Supreme Court. There was a decision made, and there was no conviction against Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. Now, when Atiku knew he has this arsenal in his armory, why did he not take up this challenge after the emergence of Tinubu as the presidential candidate of APC? To say, look, the candidate of APC, you are not qualified. And then he could have gone to Chicago State University to get all the evidences. But Atiku Abubakar left this rather late. The election had been contested and won. And then he now, even it was only after the Court of First Instance, the Court of Appeal gave a ruling in September that Atiku Abubakar quickly ran to US and got lawyers to start demanding and requesting for academic records of Bola Tinubu. Had it been that it was timely in his appeal and in his petition, maybe their lordship would have taken notice of this, and perhaps he could have been disqualified. Let me cite an example to buttress my case. In 2019, there was an allegation of identity theft and multiple identities against the running mate of David Lyon in Bayelsa State. The case was a pre-election matter, and a decision of High Court was given nullifying the candidacy of that gentleman. On the eve of the election, the Court of Appeal upheld the decision of the Court of First Instance, and eventually this man contested alongside with David Lyon, and only for Supreme Court to declare that the identity issue he has was genuine, and as such nullified the election of APC in Bayelsa State. Look at the issue of qualification arising from the nomination of Timipre Silva. It's a pre-election matter. The Court of First Instance have ruled and said he was not qualified to contest. The Court of Appeal has upheld that position. If APC decides to go ahead and still field Timipre Silva, by the time Supreme Court rules on this and say, look, you have been sworn in twice, you are not qualified, then it will be clear to everybody. Atiku Abubakar is bringing a pre-election matter to post-election issue. And that's the issue with whether the Ashwaju has a false identity, multiple identity, forged certificate. Why did he not do this ahead of the election? So their lordship did not err. Their lordship did not err by dismissing that he could not introduce fresh evidence at the apex court.
All right, but Mr. Ojo, just before you go on,
his lawyers also knew this.
Yeah, just before you go on, I want to ask, what about the argument that the Chicago State University court case, was still building. It was still something that they were working on and just wasn't readily available before the elections. Would that be, would that convince you otherwise? That's why it came at this point?
That is not true. That is not true. The Chicago State University issue had been there. Look, you go and check.
No, what I mean is, them approaching the court, them, sending, getting a subpoena to Chicago State University, them, of course, going through that whole legal process. Would you say that maybe could have been done 3 years ago or 2 years ago or just prior to the primaries?
Exactly my point. Exactly my point. Look, let's be clear about something. Will Atiku Abubakar have gone to court to challenge the identity of Tinubu if he had been the winner of this election? He wasn't doing this for any altruistic purpose. He was doing it to hand a technical knockout against a political foe. And people must see it in that light. In court, and I've told you, there are pre-election matters and there are post-election matters. If you bring post-election matters to, look at the issue of double nomination that was alleged by APM against Kashim Shettima. Their lordship, in giving the decision in September, said, look, this is a pre-election matter. It cannot be canvassed at the level of post-election. So if Atiku Abubakar knew he has this arsenal in his armory, I repeat, why did he not expedite action to make sure that it was part of his ground of appeal when he filed this petition in March? Because this petition was filed in March 2023. The election was held in February 25th. Declaration of winner was made on 1st of March. And the law says, section 285 of the Constitution says, you have to file your petition within 21 days. So this petition was filed in March of 2023. Why was the issue of identity and nomination and qualification not part of Atiku Abubakar's prayers at the court of first instance? So, he who must come to equity must come with clean hands. I don't want to go into the issue of his own identity issue of Siddiq, or whatever. Why did he remove Siddiq from his names and reinstated whatever? These are issues. But I must come to terms with what you said. This will continue to haunt Asiwaju Bola Tinubu until his death. Whether the law or the court says he was rightly nominated or not, people are bound to see him in a different light because of this issue. People are facts. Which primary school did he go to? Which secondary school did he go to? Who are his classmates at primary and secondary school? Those issues are still going to be there. And I can bet you, in 2027, if Asiwaju Bola Tinubu will contest again, this issue will be canvassed to disqualify him.
All right.
So we cannot at this point say, may God spare our lives. We cannot at this time say whether he will contest for another term, but I'm sure that when 2027 race comes up, this issue will be there waiting for him at the courts.
I mean, that's one of the things that alleging Atiku Abubakar did say, that the fact that, one of the satisfactions he would derive from this would be that he's shown Nigerians the kind of president that they have. There are several other issues that he touched on in his press statement, and one of that would be, of course, we all know that the time, after which you can institute actions concerning an election is limited, by the Constitution. He did push for a constitutional review that would ensure that every matter that concerns dispute as to the presidency, the seat of the presidency, be resolved before another president is sworn into office. And this was, of course, the case in 1979. Do you think that this is something that we should consider going forward, the possibility of resolving every election dispute before a new president is sworn into office?
Well, we just need to be very careful what we are asking for. I've had people say, oh, in Kenya, presidential election dispute is 2 weeks. I've been privileged to observe election in Uganda, and I know that there is a constitutional court to which you appeal if you are dissatisfied with the outcome of the election, and that also sits for 2 weeks, 14 days. But in Nigeria, what can you prove in 14 days? You need to be very careful about this, because their lordship have said the building block of your petition, aside from maybe you want to deal with the issue of qualification and non-qualification, which is a pre-election matter. The court has ruled that this is a pre-election matter. So you cannot hand a technical knockout by coming after election to say, oh, somebody was not qualified, somebody is a forger and all of that. But if you are going to look at the merit of an election that was conducted by the election management body, can you spend just 2 weeks to gather evidence, to file your case, and then to expect substantial justice being done? Don't forget, we have 176,846 polling units. And if you are alleging fraud, and their lordship said you have to prove case by case, polling unit by polling unit, which polling unit, how many polling units can you prove in the event that you have multiple issues with the election? So 2 weeks, the system currently running, in my own estimation, is okay. 180 days at the court of first instance, whether at the court of appeal, and then 60 days at the apex court. For governorship, you have 180 days at the court of first instance, which is the tribunal. You have 60 days at the court of appeal. You have 60 days at the Supreme Court. Then for other elections, senatorial, House of Reps, State House of Assembly, the court of first instance is the tribunal. It sits for 180 days. Then you come to the court of appeal, which is the final bus stop, which sits for another 60 days. These are all opportunities for you to canvass substantially and prove your case. Don't forget, allegation of fraud, electoral fraud, is a criminal allegation, and you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. Can you do that in 2 weeks, as with the case in Kenya, as with the case in Uganda? So if you want us to have an expeditious hearing of election petitions, you need to be mindful of how long it takes to amass evidence, to file your briefs, to take witnesses' depositions. All of this takes time. As it were, lawyers are even complaining that the 21 days given them by the Constitution is not enough. That's 3 weeks. 3 weeks to gather evidence and to file your briefs. They say it's not enough. So if you now said, okay, everything should be done in 1 month, one month, you are still looking for witnesses, you are still looking for exhibits, evidences that you want to present.
Mr. Ojo.
But if, in the wisdom of those who are at the helms of affairs, they want to limit the time frame, it's all well and good. Let us see. Don't forget that the issue of even 1979 election is still in the public domain, that there was no substantial justice done in disposing of that particular presidential election petition. But you will never satisfy politicians. That's one thing I want you to know. You will never satisfy politicians,
Yeah, but
because
it's not
politicians
just
have only one interest, which is power.
Yeah, Mr. Ojo, I mean, we need to go, but it's not just about satisfying politicians. It's also about continuing to fine-tune Nigeria's electoral process. There's still, even with the supposed improvements that were made and the adjustments in the Electoral Act and laws, there's still obviously a lot of loopholes that need to be closed up if we're moving forward. And these are simply just suggestions that will come up here and there that Nigerians would have to X-ray and see if they would make our electoral process a lot better. I would like to have you join us again. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and have a lovely day ahead.
And you too. It's a pleasure.